Now we're gonna have our second speaker, which is PM Haze. So we have Benjamin, Tay, as well as Yukie to present. Now on this topic, Ben, I'm going to introduce the two speakers real quickly, is Executive Director of PM Haze. So he coordinates haze prevention programs, both locally and overseas, as well as advocacy programs, so including reaching out to businesses and consumers to adopt sustainable palm oil. So he also works with Indonesian and Malaysian communities to develop and implement ecological restoration of degraded peatlands, as he will speak on later, and sustainable development of community livelihoods. Benjamin has a Master's of Asia Pacific Studies with distinction from Australian National University. He aspires for people to go beyond adaptation strategies to find solutions to prevent transboundary haze. Yeah, a very noble cause. I've known Ben for quite a few years and volunteered. I don't know how much I do, but they've accepted me as part of the voluntary group. Yukie Yokoyama is a research associate with PM Haze. So as a research associate, she designs the strategy and implementation of scientific monitoring of peatland restoration projects, as well as develop various community-led monitoring protocols for peatland restoration in Sungai Toho, Riau. That's the project that we are working on. We're privileged to have her as a part-time research assistant with us. She currently is a final year Bachelor of Environmental Studies undergraduate at the National University of Singapore. So with that introduction, I'll have Ben and Yukie present their paper to us. Ben?
Thank you very much, Charles, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar. And thank you so much for taking your time in the afternoon to attend this. I'd like to just give a shout out to UONS as well as the Universitas Lambung for actually helping us for actually coordinating this particular webinar today. As Charles has already mentioned, PM Haze, I represent PM Haze, and I've been with PM Haze since 2015. And we are mainly involved in developing haze prevention programs in Singapore, as well as outside of Singapore in Malaysia and Indonesia through our work with the communities there. We are essentially looking at how people in Singapore can actually take responsibility for transboundary haze, and so it's not about shifting blame to our neighbors. It's not about saying that, oh, you know, we are an urban society, therefore we have no connections to rural areas, and therefore we are not part of the problem. We try to, through our consumer programs, try to impart this knowledge as well as awareness around how consumers can actually play a part, both in their consumption patterns, as well as, you know, through people like Charles, for example, who has been volunteering with us and is currently a member of PM Haze as well. How people can actually take actions into their own hands and make a difference. So just a little bit about our organization. We are a registered charity in Singapore. We've been registered as a charity since 2017. And we have a governing board, a volunteer governing board that kind of governs over the organization, as well as helps with strategic planning. Our members, like Charles and other members on the team, actually help in terms of very specific work areas where we engage them to help us and tap on their expertise as well. Yukie and myself are part of the executive team. Executive team basically looks over the entire operations of the organization, both our outreach and engagement work, as well as our peatland restoration work in Indonesia and to some extent in Malaysia as well. On top of that, we do engage skill-based volunteers from many walks of life, and as well as youth advocates from our tertiary institutions to assist us on various projects, and we also play a mentorship role to some of these students in helping them to actually develop their knowledge and passion for environmental issues. We are currently supported by the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. They are the oldest think tank in Singapore, and they were actually one of the pioneer programs that they set up in 1997 was actually to develop more research and knowledge around the transboundary haze problem. This year, we're very proud to be a part of the David and Lucille Packard Foundation. They are supporting some of our work some of our downstream work and engaging in with businesses in Singapore to adopt sustainable palm oil. So I think today we'll be really talking about the restoration of community-managed degraded peatlands, and Yukie is probably the best candidate to actually give you guys a bit more detail on our program. But perhaps I'll just give you a quick overview. Our interactions with this particular program began because we felt that the management of peatlands is actually a very big part of, or rather it can contribute to stopping transboundary haze, because we have identified it as being one of the root causes of transboundary haze. As you know, peatland areas are actually very carbon sinks and carbon rich areas, and we need to protect these areas because for example, for every hectare of degraded peatland, you're talking about the equivalent, the CO2 emissions equivalent to 3 passenger vehicles on an annual basis. So that's a lot of carbon dioxide that would be saving if we actually restore these areas. So our project is actually in Sungai Tohor, Riau, which Yukie will talk about more. And we have worked with that community since 2017, and we've taken our time to actually develop this this project together with them to make sure that it's both consultative as well as with the objective of them actually taking on these programs and taking ownership of these programs, right? Because we're not there to restore the 2 million hectares of degraded peatlands in Indonesia that needs to be restored, right? What we want to do is that we want to assist communities there. We want to help the people there to better understand what a restored peatland looks like, and how do you successfully implement a restoration program that is both scientifically significant, right, ecologically significant, as well as accessible to the community as well. So I'll stop here, and I'll let Yukie continue and give you guys a little bit more detail into what are some of our program objectives, as well as some of the things that we're doing in our peatland restoration program.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So I'll be taking over from here. So just wanted to share about our site, which is Sungai Tohor, and also wanted to say that there has been ongoing. It has been identified as a priority area by the government, as it is one of the few villages that's mostly covered in peat, and also experienced peatland degradation in recent years. Oops. Yeah. So this peatland restoration program is an ongoing effort to restore degraded peatland through the cooperation and involvement of the local community of Sungai Tohor, financial support from donors, and local NGOs such as Economic Creative Andalan, that's based in Indonesia. Yep, so this is the team that's working on the program. So with the help of our program coordinator, Ari, and the 3 community leaders, this program has been going smooth sailing so far and has been well received by the community. We also have research collaborations with the University of Newcastle, as well as NTU. Yep, so just wanted to share, we've got 3 main program intended impacts. The first is to reduce fire and haze risks with a community-led 2-pronged approach of rewetting and revegetation to restore the hydrological regime and the carbon storage capacity of degraded peatlands. Yeah. And second is our enhanced community-centric peatland restoration model, where community members are involved in the planning and the execution of the program and empowered to participate in the activities through education, capacity building, and developing alternative livelihood options. Our third impact is to increase collaboration among regional stakeholders in peatland restoration to build relationships and partnerships across the region and to enhance engagement with our stakeholders, as well as to collate and disseminate the best peatland restoration practices from such programs. Okay, so at PM Haze, we believe in the importance of community participation as it gives them the rights to be involved in the preparation and planning process. It motivates them to take ownership of the program and to formulate solutions that would best cater to their needs. So additionally, building technical capacity by integrating local experience with science-based practices are critical to have impactful measurables to determine the effectiveness and the progress of the program. So we acknowledge that 100% scientific approach may not be the most feasible with community-driven projects. So we have come up with a simplified science-based approach to ensure that the community is able to fully understand the goals and impacts of the program, to have maximum participation, and to be fully involved in the planning, implementation, and execution of the program. So for instance, like the botany study, how we can help them learn how to ID certain tree species and what kind of parameters we are looking at and how to measure them. So for our ecological impacts, as mentioned, we're looking at revegetation and rewetting. So for each approach, we split it into two parts: the implementation, which is to understand the concept behind the ecological impacts, and to plan the protocol on how to measure it, such as building the infrastructure and getting the right tools to measure the parameters. And for research and monitoring, it is to monitor the ecological impacts through data collection to see its effectiveness over time. So, so since the restoration program has been rolled out, I'm pleased to say that most of our objectives have been met. We now have 2 restoration sites of 6 hectares. We have 3 nurseries with a seedling capacity of more than 9,000 seedlings. We have translocated more than 6,000 species from the nurseries to the restoration site. And we also have 4 repaired and fully functional canal blocks. So for community participation, we've also had a very strong turnout of at least 60 families and 100 individuals taking part in our program. Okay, so now I'll be talking more in depth about each of our impacts. For revegetation, we started off with a botany study of an intact peat forest to act as a baseline for the revegetation. So parameters such as diversity and the structural composition of species of a native peat forest were recorded to determine and identify viable species for the restoration sites. So from the study, from the findings of the study, we then picked out 13 species that were identified as viable for restoration based on their importance value index score, local experience, as well as their ability to grow fast. And yeah, so on top of this, we also had 4 species that were chosen based on their commercial value. So these are like Coffea liberica, ramin for their hardwood properties, and sago. So from this, the seedlings were then collected from a nearby native forest and then grown in the 3 nurseries that were constructed by the community. Yeah, so once the seedlings reach a certain level of maturity, they will then be translocated to the restoration site. So the community helps conduct some form of maintenance at the restoration sites to help increase the seedlings' chances of survival. So this includes enrichment activities like watering, especially during periods of low rainfall, as well as assisted natural regeneration, such as invasive species management, so that the seedlings do not have to compete with other plants and organisms. Yeah. So on top of this, to provide the community with incentives, we are also planting some polyculture species, mainly sago. So currently, sago is the main source of income for Sungai Toho, and it is advantageous as it involves the wet cultivation in peatlands. So this means it can maintain the peat integrity and still sustain ecosystem services. Sago is also advantageous as it requires minimal maintenance, which makes them very productive and operate at a low maintenance cost. Sago flour is also found in many food products and chemical items. Yeah, so overall, cultivating sago really helps to increase the resilience and the capacity of the community to adapt to climate change, as well as to provide a sustainable livelihood. So on top of sago, we're also currently testing out the wet cropping of pineapples as a polyculture crop. So previous research has shown that pineapples have the potential for scalability and acceptability to farmers. But we also acknowledge that they might not be the best polyculture crop as they still require some form of drainage for their cultivation. So they might not be ideal on a large scale setting. Okay, so moving on to our second ecological impact of rewetting. It is important that we try to restore the hydrological balance in peatlands as groundwater level is a key factor determining fires in peat areas. So monitoring the water levels can help us know when the water table falls below critical depth for us to identify periods that may be more susceptible to fires. Yeah. So canal blocks, like the purpose of the canal blocks is to help reduce the surface runoff and to increase the water storage capacity within these blocked canals, which will then help to increase the water levels. Yeah. So before the restoration program by PM Haze, there are existing canal blocks, but they were not fully functional as they were not designed to withstand periods of high rain intensity. So part of this program was to repair the canal blocks as well as to maintain them so that they help to raise the water levels. So since this program has started, we have now 4 repaired and fully functional canal blocks in the canal near Sungai Toho. So for us, effective monitoring is critical because it helps to determine the success of the program and to make us evaluate what works and what doesn't. So it is also important that the techniques that we develop here will help us determine the critical tolerance and threshold levels of the ecological and hydrological systems, as well as their impacts on the ecosystem services. And on top of this, reviewing the current protocols can help us re-establish new goals as the project progresses and evolves towards an ecosystem that can bring about long-lasting social, ecological, and economic benefits. So one of the things that we have been measuring is the plant growth measurements at the restoration site. So this is carried out by 2 EKA members every 2 months since January. And from this, we can identify which species are doing well at the restoration site, such as the Meranti Bakau and the Meranti Bunga. So for peat water levels, it was done via dip wells as it is a simple and effective way of establishing the overall water budget of the site as well as observe the changes over time. So from the data collected, there is a clear relationship between the depth of the water table and rainfall. And from these results, we can also see that it has been positive as we see an upward trend of the peat water levels since the repair of the canal blocks. Okay, so we have, at PM Haze, we have various programs that help to support the community development at Sungai Toho. So one of the programs that I just want to highlight is the seed donation drive, which is the latest edition and began in July this year during the COVID pandemic. So the aim of this program is to focus on community and family-based agricultural activities and to increase the self-sufficiency by helping the community members find an alternative source of income while also strengthening their food security. So with the community garden, it is hoped that the community will be able to save on their expenses for their nutritional needs and divert this to other needs. And so for this program, we had 60 families participating, which is a very encouraging show. And yeah, so overall, there seems to be positive support from the community and the village chief for this program, as they understand the importance and benefits of how a healthy peat ecosystem can help improve the environment as well as their livelihoods. So high community involvement in the projects, as well as integrating economic programs such as the sale of seedlings from the nurseries or fruits and vegetables from the community garden, are really strong incentives that prove to play an important role in the success of this program. And on top of this, having a local institution like EKA to kickstart this program was really important to help the community get on board, as well as to be a bridge to share their needs as well as their expectations. Yeah, so in conclusion, we hope that this gives an overview of the importance of community-based restoration, and we hope that we can continue to expand on our program and help Sungai Toho inspire other communities to do the same. Yeah, thank you.